This student went from 230 to 263 in 2 weeks. She'd been grinding UWorld for months, stuck at 230. Our first session helped her solidify her strategy instead of panicking. Then she hit the 250s. 3 days before this recording that I'm about to show you, she made a genius move that jumped her to 263. The same move that every single 260 plus scorer I've ever met has done. In this call, she walks through exactly how she approached that 263 exam, and we discuss the pattern that causes high scoring students to crash on test day.
So I was like, I literally saw the score. I was like, that can't, that is silly.
So how did it feel to take the test? What did it like, when you reviewed it afterwards, like what did you see?
So, okay, let's see. Well, I did a few things different before again, because before I took this exam, I mean, I was fresh. I did it at like, I felt good. All those controllable things were in my favor. I felt good. Wonderful. And I told myself, first of all, I gave myself the grace not to know every detail because I was confident in my strategy. Because I'm like, okay, I already got the 250. I already passed my plateau. So now I'm like more confident in my strategy. So I'm like, I have confidence in my strategy. I don't have to know every detail. I'm confident in what I'm doing. And that relaxed my, like the pressure that I had mentally because I felt less pressure. And I was just like, just do what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Just do it. And I was like, I would end, and I did not use a timer this time. And I had like 8-9 minutes left every block. I was like, this can't be right. Because you're right. I did have a feeling already. I'm like, oh, it's probably been about a minute. It's probably been about a minute. And my rule in, rule out, I saw one of the videos on like incontinence. And you had an example of like very simple rule in, rule outs. Like you don't have to have this whole dramatic map of rule in, rule out. So I was doing more simple rule in, rule outs. And it was like the answer was right there. So it was a lot of amazing things happened.
Oh.
Again, I felt good. I felt like confident. I felt good. But the 263 kind of like, that was a crazy score from.
Wow, congrats. That's awesome. Now, when you went over it afterwards, what did you see in terms of like the questions that you were missing?
So still with the OB, not the gyne part anymore, the OB part, the labor and complications, it's not sticking. So I'm going to do more content dive because, for example, one of the questions I was like, I know it's inducing the labor, but inducing labor versus C-section, that's where I was like, I know the baby has to come out.
Yeah.
So
Probably an issue of severity in that case.
I didn't read the fetal monitor properly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, like again, like this, but it sounds like. So the reason I ask is because typically, like, so let's look at your. I'm looking at your.
I mean, and still, of course, some content, of course.
Well, actually, that's actually my guess is that's actually more of it, right? So if you look at like your scores here, these were more of like an interpretation thing, right? Like we went through the NVMe, it was like pretty obvious that there was just a lot of things where you were like, you were the lawyer, not the judge, like that kind of thing. Whereas this one, if I recall correct, did we talk after this one? I think we did.
Yeah, we did. And I did more rule in, rule out stuff, and I was focused more on that process.
Exactly. And so like a lot of it for that one is, it was, I think there were, if I recall correctly, like a larger percentage of the things that you were getting wrong were actually because of knowledge.
Yeah, now it's, yeah.
And typically what you find is that when you're in like the 260 range, typically like a larger portion are knowledge, right? Because you've kind of like minimized the sort of interpretation errors. And so then it kind of swings to the other side, right? Once you solve one problem, it doesn't mean you have no problems. It just means like when you solve your biggest problem, it doesn't mean you have no problems. It just means that the next biggest problem becomes your biggest problem. And so knowledge was not your limiting factor before, but now it actually probably is, right? Like now it sounds like OB stuff. So the way that I want to actually have this discussion is different from the ones prior. And I'm gonna tell you what I want to talk about and why I want to talk about it, and then you tell me if that sounds like, how's that sound? Is that fair?
Yeah.
If you're serious about maximizing your scores, join our 14-day mini course now. We'll send you 14 high-yield videos that break down the exact concepts and test strategies our students use for 260 plus scores. Click the link in the description below now to get instant access.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that we've established very clearly that you can do extremely well on this test. And so now it really is, it's kind of like about playing defense, right? It's like when you're up a lot, like I don't want to say that you're playing not to lose, like, because you still want to play to win, but at the same time, you want to avoid something really catastrophic from happening. Right?
Yeah.
And so I want to talk, I don't want to jinx you and I don't want to scare you, but I do think it's important to understand that, like, sometimes when people get really, really high scores, they end up scoring lower on the real thing. And I want to tell you why I think that happens so that you can avoid that.
Okay.
And the reason I do this is because I've seen it now enough times that I feel like, and it's kind of a new phenomenon. And I don't think it's a new phenomenon to us specifically. I think it's a new phenomenon that I've noticed it kind of ever since, like, the cohorts have gone through that, it was like where step one was pass fail. More people have have failed step one in some of the early shelf exams. And so I think they carry that sort of like burden, or dare I even say like trauma, with them. And they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So let me describe to you what those scenarios are. So how does that sound to you? Would that be a good use of this session?
Yes, I think yes. Yes.
Okay. Because, like, I want to make sure, like, really the ultimate thing is I want you to score as well, if not better, on your real thing. And I want you to avoid, right? Because if you could even just get like either of your last two NBMEs, like, I think you would be thrilled, right? And so it's not really like, we could spend more time on, figuring out how to raise your score even more. But I think the more valuable thing is actually to try to protect you on the downside.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I agree.
So let me tell you the story. I mean, we've seen this now like multiple times. And so I'm going to tell you like several stories of people whose scores dropped significantly on their real test relative to what it is that they were predicted to score. The most recent one was someone who, man, someone just texted me earlier. It's so common now. She was scoring like, I think probably 240s on her NBMEs. And she is a Korean medical student. She scored like 180 something on her CCSE. I was like, whoa. And if I hadn't seen this story before, and I didn't know the sort of scenarios in which it happens, I probably would have been more surprised. But I'm not entirely surprised, because now I think I kind of know like the characteristics. So this, there was another student recently who he was scoring 250s and he ended up with a G28. And there was another student who was scoring like 250s, 260s, and ended up with something probably pretty similar, like maybe 230s, something like that. Now, granted, there's tons of people who score like 260s and they end up with 260s, or 250s and end up with 250s.
Right.
That's, that's kind of, that happens, I think, statistically more. It's just that we have enough students now where it's like, we see that there is a significant minority of students where like you do see those drops.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you why I think it happens. So in virtually every single case where I've seen someone score significantly below, like we had one student, he was scoring high 70s on step one NBMEs and he still failed step one. And it was not crazy. And again, you do this long enough and you see like crazy scenarios. And so I share these with you because I want you to learn from them and kind of understand what I think was going on. So I'll give you, in every single one of those cases, can you think of like, what's the one thing that you think like highlighted was the uniting factor in all of those?
My first thought was their mental state, like their confidence or mental state going into it, and like maybe hitting really hard question block and then not recovering from that block.
Yeah. And what do you think, was true about their prior experiences with exams?
I think maybe they're probably like they have test anxiety, like they would classify as someone with test anxiety.
Yeah. Every single one of them had failed one of their USMLEs before. And in most cases, they wanted to go into something competitive. The one that was like 250s and also like dropped, wanted to go into ENT and had failed step one. The other one, like the one that wants to be a transplant surgeon, had failed step one. We had another one who was scoring like 240s. She ended up failing. She wanted to go on ENT. She'd failed step two previously. There was another one who was scoring like 240s. She dropped a little bit. Actually, that wasn't such a big one. I'm trying to think of all the people that have dropped. Virtually every single person that I know, like the one that was scoring like high 70s, low 80s, he'd failed step one twice before.
Wow.
And so, and he wanted to go into radiology, and he was an IMG. And so, like, in every single one of those cases, they were putting immense pressure on themselves to try to make up for some kind of mistake that they felt that they had made in their past. And this was going to be that redemption, that like redeeming thing that's going to like sort of rewrite their entire narrative.
Yeah.
And so I remember having discussions with these people. And so like I talked to some of them afterwards, and they were like, yeah, like it's just everything. So like there was that student that was scoring like 240s, like she scored 240s and then she failed, right? It was like her scores had gone up, and then her actual score was like, I don't know, 210, something like that. And then every NBME that she took after that was like also in the 210s. It was like something like snapped, and it was like right? Because it wasn't, because my hypothesis, like I had multiple hypotheses. I was like, is it just that like step 2 is just different this time? Like, they always release like a new test. Like, is it just, because some people complain like, oh, these questions are so different from what it is that I've experienced. People have said that since the dawn of time. So, but like, is it that? Is it that like, there's something about the program that's like preparing people well for the NBMEs and like not for the test? Is it that, are they just like panicking? Is there something like that's sort of true of like all these people? Some people are scoring exactly what it is they're predicted. I don't think it's a program thing. That also shows that I don't really think it's like the step 2 thing, right? Like there's plenty of people that go in scoring 260s and end up with 260s, or go in scoring 240s and end up with 240s. It's like but there's enough people now where it's like, I don't know what's going on. But when I thought about it, I was like, okay, well, let's think of every single one of these people. Yeah, every single one of them failed a prior test and felt immense pressure to perform. And so like some people would tell me like, yeah, whenever I feel, what did they say? I know that to get to 260, I can only miss about 10 questions per block on an NBME.
I don't really think like that. Like,
don't think that way. Please don't think that way. But that's like, that was what he
yeah.
And he's like, and so I'm counting as I'm doing questions, and I'm like, oh, okay, I probably missed that one. Oh yeah, I probably missed that one. And so it's like, I'm counting the number of flagged questions, and he's like, I'm not really in the test. I'm like, well, yeah, you're not. You can't be in the test.
Yeah.
And so another one, so the flip side is that one of them was telling me about her best shelf exam ever. Like where she outperformed her test. And she said, honestly, all I did was I didn't worry about the outcome, and I just pretended that the patient was in front of me every single time. And I was just like, what would I actually do? Like I would visualize it. Like one thing that I used to do was I would pretend that if the patient said that they had chest pain, like I would touch my chest, or if they had like a broken femur, I would like touch my right femur, right? I was like, whatever it was, because I was like trying to actually like make it concrete, right? I actually did that like whenever you have a trauma patient, it's actually really helpful to do that too. Like in real life, like in the ICU, if you have like a trauma admit or something like that, like I would be like, okay, because there's so many injuries sometimes, you're like left rib, whatever.
Yeah.
But like you got to make it concrete. So that was, she said like, I made it concrete and I focused only on the process and I didn't worry about the outcome. And she's like, I was scoring in the 70s on my NBMEs, and, I scored in the 80s on the actual exam. She's like, that was the first and only time that I outperformed where it was that I had done on my practice tests.
Wow.
So what does that mean? First of all, like, what are your thoughts so far on this?
That is exactly what I did yesterday. That exact like offload of pressure.
Yeah.
And I already told myself, like, I have publications, I have research, I am an IMG, but I have charisma. I have a lot of wonderful things. So it's like, if UM doesn't accept me, someone else will accept me. I'm going to be a neurologist. I'm going to be a great wherever I go. So I'm like, and I did the best. I'm working with you. I'm doing the best I can every day. So I'm going to go in there and I'm not going to have regrets, because again, I did the best. I did the best that I possibly could. So in accepting that process, like yesterday, I was like, okay, I've done the best that I could for today. So let's just go in and try to do this again. Again, when I did see the score, I was like, I did feel fatigued after those 4 blocks. So that is something that I want to work on in the next few weeks. Like, I mean, I guess question 50, like I was just tired. I'm tired of sitting, like my headache came back. I was just like tired after 5 hours. So I think in the next few weeks, maybe I'll try to do like longer days, maybe more blocks. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that jump was only because I offloaded the pressure. And I was like, I did the best I could. And like that score. And like a confident, like it wasn't like a fluke, because sometimes I'll like when I got to 250, I was like, this can't be right. There's an error. I guessed good. But no, this time I was like, I was confident in the strategies. And I was like, look, like I was expecting a good score because I knew, like, again, I was just confident in my questions. And the ones that I had highlighted, the ones that I got wrong was lack of knowledge. I was like, darn, I did not put bronchitis in my differential. I did not put that in my differential. But I was even doing differentials. So I'm constantly changing, and I feel like I found a really good rhythm for my questions and how to approach it with time to spare. So
yeah, just keep doing that. Because like generally what we find is that the people that do really well on this test. So let me explain what I want to talk about next is what are the things that you can do to make sure that you can maintain that, and that again, like you don't kind of fall into the dark zone. Right?
Yeah.
Again, you're an athlete, you've performed in high pressure situations, you've practiced this. This is one of the reasons why I honestly believe that athletes are generally better. I can say this because I was never really an athlete. Like when I look at the athletes that I coach, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they are different. Like it is like there's something about the mindset, the resilience, the like, yeah, like it's just, yeah, it's normal that like the other team's gonna score, and like, you know, like you just like you don't take it personally, you don't crumble, like you practice.
My bounce back is really, I don't get down. If I didn't know a question, I don't let that hinder me. And a lot of my friends, like I hear what they say and I'm like, I never feel that. If I don't know, I don't know. I move on and I'm fresh and excited for the next one. But I've always been like that. So it's hard to explain it to people like, oh, don't be bogged down. But like, so I don't know. So I know I don't do that, at least. Like, it's,
I mean, like I would imagine volleyball is kind of like that, right? It's like, you know, you got a bad point and like you just got to move on. It's just one point. Just move on to the next one, right? Like you cannot let that derail you. They say for like cornerbacks, they say like you have to have a short memory. Another thing that I found that is helpful in case like, because again, hopefully this is all for nothing and like you don't need this at all. You've done a very good job of breaking this down into the different steps: context, chronology, severity, standalone question, like rule in, rule out. Like, you know, you're analyzing like which part you need to work on. You're not just following it blindly. You're like, oh no, like this is now my biggest problem. Oh yeah, I didn't consider that my differential. Yeah, I should probably do the DDX game. Yeah, I should probably like, it's great, right? Like again, athlete, that makes sense. So the other things that I have found really helpful are like, so yes, definitely you want to have a good bounce back. Like that is critical. Is you just expect it, know that there's going to be some bad questions. You got to just have a short memory, move on to the next question. Like even just like compliment the other side. Be like, dang, that was a really good question. Like I have no idea what that was. Okay, on to the next one, right? Like kind of keep your humor about it.
Even taking these exams, it's very rare that I'm like, wow, I had no idea what that. It's because I have studied all year 3. I have studied hard all year, not just like in a month, not just in 2. All year, I've been consistent. I've been disciplined all year. So it's very rare that I come across something and I'm like, I have no idea. Maybe it gets differentials wrong, but usually like my differentials are there. It's just a matter of now following like the skills that you taught me. So that is very reassuring to me that I'm going through the exam and I'm like, oh, I know this. Like if I just did rule in, rule out better, if I just did a better differential. So like my analysis now is also different. Like for my analysis for this exam was different when, you know, versus the other exams I have been analyzing. So I'm just getting more out of even the review. And like you said a few times, a few weeks ago, you were like, don't even review the exam. I used to spend like 6 days reviewing the exam. And I did it. I barely reviewed the one 3 days ago on Saturday. And I scored a tremendous amount. I left 12 points higher. So I'm like, okay, this is all in my strategy. This is all in my strategy. So a lot of reassuring things have been like just boosting my confidence and reminding me that I worked hard all year, not just in 2 weeks. So yeah, this is
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's just, I think it's nice too, because it sounds like this has really reinforced it for you, right? It's like you kind of had the inkling, like, yeah, I could do really well. Yeah, like I do think this is more of an interpretation thing. Yeah, yeah, I probably don't need to like, spend 6 hours doing this NBME, but it's like you did it, and it's like it actually works, right? It's like you're like, I did this more, I leaned into it more, the things that I thought were going to work, and like it did, and even better than I expected, right? Because now it's like you don't improve by 11 points in 3 days and have it be knowledge.
Yeah, no,
It's not possible. It's just, there's just no way that that's possible. And so the next thing I want to talk about is the importance of making sure that you don't fear the negative scenario. And you kind of did this already. So I just want to reinforce what it is that you did. For example, when I was in medical school, my advisor at Stanford told me that I should aim for a 260 on step one. He told everyone else to aim for a 250. So step one, like a 260 on step one is kind of like a 270 on step two. Like it's a really high score, because the average score for step one was about 10, now a little bit more points less than the average on step two. Wow. So the average was about 240. The average on step two is about 250. So it's like, so if you think about like a 260 on step one is really like a 270 on step two. Yeah. And I remember thinking for a brief second, wow, that's like so awesome that he thinks that I could do this. And then after that, I was just sheer terror. Because I was like, oh my God, I felt so much, because I was a first year medical student. This was my first quarter of my first year at Stanford. And my advisor was like, wow, you're doing really well. You should aim for a 260. And I was like, and so I couldn't sleep. I couldn't concentrate. I just felt like palpitations all the time. Like it was bad. It was really, really bad. And so eventually I told myself, you know what? I don't care about my scores. So I was like, even if worrying about this so much meant that I could get a 260, which I didn't think was true, but like, even if going through this misery would get me a 260, I don't want that life. I would rather like still maintain my love of learning, still focus on doing the right things, taking care of myself, getting good sleep. And like, I would rather do those things and just see how I do than like stress about this test. And ultimately I made peace with, I was like, okay, so let's say that I don't get a 2. So I ended up scoring a 270. I was scoring like kind of 260s in like my NBMEs, but I like it in the beginning, I was like, it's going okay, but I was like, not great. And so eventually I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to not care about my score. And worst case scenario, I don't know, probably let's say I barely pass, or God, heaven forbid I fail. And I was like, okay, that would be bad. Like, obviously that would be bad. However, I was sort of subconsciously doing a technique that I've since learned, which is that you want to imagine the worst case scenario and then ask yourself, what would I do in that scenario? Because a lot of people, every single one of us has a worst case scenario in our head. Every one of us, most of us, and I think it's good not to like ruminate on it. Like I actually think it's healthy not to just like sit there and be like, right. The drawing's so good, like However, I do think that for the purposes of being in the zone on your test and not sort of like having your score fall, I actually think it's beneficial to consider like, what would I do in the worst case scenario if it were to happen? Because if I know what I would do in that situation, I'll also know that I will be okay. And if I know that I'll be okay, suddenly that worst case scenario isn't quite so scary. And most importantly, is less likely to kind of like get in my head on test day.
Yeah.
So I told myself, like, so what would I do? Worst case scenario, I mean, really worst case scenario, I fail. So then I have to study again. And like, yeah, it's probably going to close the door on like some of the specialties I want to do and like some of the places I might want to go. And like, I mean, that would be bad. Obviously, I don't want that to happen. But what would I do? I mean, I would study again. hopefully I would pass. Like I'd have to figure something out. Like I would pass. Clearly I'm capable of this because like I'm scoring, 260s on me, so like I should be okay. But like, and then like, but I'll be a doctor. Like I'll figure it out. Like I believe that if I put in in the work and, I really continue to maintain my knowledge and keep growing it and learn things the right way and treat people the right way, like I'll be fine eventually. And paradoxically, like not caring so much about the score is exactly what happened to you. I saw my score like really jump at that point. I jumped like, I don't know, maybe probably almost 20 points from my next practice test.
Yeah.
And so I would say that that's like kind of the other part of this, right? So you want to have a good bounce back, like you said. And then you also, I do think it's valuable to consider like, okay, what would be the worst case scenario? If the worst thing were to happen, what would I do? And then actually like force yourself to game plan it. Again, not saying that like I want it to happen, I think it's going to happen, but just to diffuse that negative scenario, because really at this stage, you just want to not panic on your test. Like if you do that, you're going to be fine.
I feel like I self-consciously had been doing that worst case scenario because I was 21, about to go into Nova Medical School, and I had stroke. So that was worst case scenario. I was incapable of walking, I was incapable of moving my arm. That was worst case scenario. So now I'm like, there's nothing in this world that could put me back in that bed. So I'm like, worst case, I don't do well on this exam. And I go to a hospital that is not the best, but I am still so happy to be there. And I will be happy doing whatever. So like I have a very different perspective on my worst case scenario because I feel like the worst has happened and happened for 5 years and chemotherapy. So it's like I feel very happy and like blessed that I'm able to sit and try to be a physician and try to be a colleague to my doctors. That to me is amazing. But that's where the pressure came. I felt a lot of pressure from my doctors. They're like, how you doing? How's it going? I'm gonna write you a letter. What are you scoring? So they're asking me and pushing and pushing, and that gets me nervous. Their idea of me and of knowing me for 8 years, and I'm being very like intimate in who I am and like in my family, like so how they see me matters a lot. So I don't want to fail them. That's where I think in the last few weeks I was battling. I'm like, but now I'm like I did the best, and so I'm proud of where I am and how I got there, and whatever score I get, I'm gonna be proud of it. So I let go of that pressure. That was hindering me personally. So that was like a really heavy pressure that I felt, and it translated to how nervous I was in my exams. So that to me was my own, that was my issue. I did the work, I really gone through everything. It was just, I wanted to prove to them that I was worthy of being their colleague and of being trained by them. So
how did you overcome that? Or how have you overcome that?
I am just reminding myself that I am not who I am is not defined by this exam. And even my CV can have all these things, but who I am as a person, I think will, like, if my program director loves my CV more than more than he or she loves me, I don't want to go to that program. I want the program director to really like my character, my work ethic, my discipline, my perspective, that more than she published 6 things. To me, that's more important. So knowing that is how I started to offload that pressure. And I'm like, they should be proud of me. And I hope they are, because I'm a good person, because they know me. So I was looking at it as, okay, maybe they're just pushing me because they want the best for me. They believe in me, like how your advisor was like.
Yeah.
So I just changed my outlook on the pressure to see it as, they just really believe in me. That's all.
Yeah. One of the phrases that I like from sports is pressure is a privilege. And it's kind of true, right? It's like, it's like having advisors or mentors that believe in us. Like, I'd much rather that than the alternative, right? It's like, I feel, it's a blessing to have so many people in your corner that care about you and that, right? So it's like yeah, I don't know. Like, kind of feel silly because like mentally, I think you're very resilient. Like really, I think you just want to lean into that. Just remember that when you take your test, like there's going to be hard questions and some of them you're going to get wrong and that's okay. And sometimes you might misread it or whatnot, but it's like, just as long as you don't take it personally, and as long as you don't carry it to the next question, and as long as you don't perseverate on a question and spend like 5 minutes on a question, there's no way that one question should lead into the next. Each is an independent event. And yeah, so that's awesome. Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to share.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I would, because ultimately what I want to know is like, why are you missing questions? I mean, I want both of us to know that, right? And so, because it's a lot easier to sort of, there's two ways to fix a problem. You can either focus on like the mistakes that you're making and try to find the pattern and fix that. And then sort of along with that, you want to also figure out like, what are you doing right? You're doing a lot of things right. Just do more of that. It's like you are doing rule in, rule out, just do that consistently, right? Like,
yeah, I didn't do it every time. And I was like, if I would have ruled in, ruled out this one question, I would have got it right.
Right. And so the generally to get from like 220s to 240s with question interpretation, it's like you have to learn the thing. So like, for example, we have a student, Sarah, she like barely passed most, if not all of her shelf exams. Her IM and family medicine shelf scores were like 50s, like really low. Like most places that would be considered failing. She just took CMS forms for IM and like unused. She didn't know at the time that there was such a thing as like CMS forms. I know, crazy. And she scored an 80 and 82 on family medicine and in general medicine. Generally speaking, to get to sort of like high 70, I mean, that's a pretty dramatic jump, but like to get from middling scores to like low, like high 70s, low 80s, generally it's like you have to learn how to do the thing. So she's only been in the program like 2 or 3 weeks. Like she just learned how to do the thing. And she's done a good job. And she had a lot of knowledge. Like she was someone that came in with a lot of knowledge. So again, it's like that's the kind of person that can see a big jump, just like you. To go from like 240s to like 250s to 260s, it's really just like you have to do the right thing, not some of the time, but every time.
All the time.
All right, Amanda, really good to see you. Congratulations on your score again. Like, but remember, it doesn't matter, right? Like the score doesn't matter. You are the kind of person where you will do well regardless of where it is you end up. Like you have the right mindset, attitude, everything. And so you don't need the score to live the life that I think that you're capable of living and impacting the people that I think you are more than capable of impacting. And so your score will be a nice, like, it's like a signpost on the way, but it's not going to define anything that's important about you or your future or, your career. And as long as you remember that, honestly, your chances of scoring higher are actually better.
These mindset and approach techniques can transform your score, but there's one missing piece. The student who went from failing to the top 0.5% did more than change her approach. She built a complete study method using a proven framework that virtually guarantees a 260+. Click here to see the study method that achieved her 99th percentile score.